Hey guys, welcome to another video. Today we're going to be installing gauges on my 2022 Subaru BRZ, again codenamed Sylvie. If you guys haven't watched the last video on Sylvie's build, we did install the Subaru BRZ TS, the 2018 TS carbon fiber wing. In the background, I did go ahead and ceramic coat my wing and put PPF on just the carbon part of it, just so it won't like degrade over time or start peeling. But like I said, today we're going to be installing a boost gauge, a oil pressure gauge, and a air fuel ratio gauge. This is more or less for future plans to boost Sylvie with the JDL turbo kit. I did have the same gauges on my Scion FRS that was supercharged, but I'm like, okay, I already have the gauges. All I had to do was really buy the gauge trim for it, and I'm gonna go ahead and show you the gauge trim that I bought, which is really awesome. All right, and this is the gauge trim right here. So as you can see, it is a tripod gauge where it has, again, the air fuel ratio, oil pressure, and the boost gauge there. I know it has these little holes here. I'm gonna be removing this and filling those holes and wrapping this all in kind of like a suede material, like maybe like Alcantara material. I really want to match this guy right here to the same material on the gauge pods and on this shelf right here. So as you can see, I kind of mocked it up, screwed it in, made the holes for it, but it's not wired up just yet. I'm going to show you guys in this video how to wire it up, how to kind of route your wires. As you can see, it's like a little bit of a weird area to get wires from, the engine bay and all the sensors to the gauges and to wiring it up. And as you can see, I already have some of my wires already like kind of put in the places where I know they're going to go. From the FRS, I kind of have an idea of where all these wires go. So right here, the top one that I have laid out here is going to be connecting inside to, I believe, the gauge directly. And then this guy is going to go to, oh, sorry, that's the wrong way around. So this is going to go to the boost sensor that's going to sit right there in front of the strut bar. And then this guy is going to go to the oil pressure sensor. I'm going to be using this guy right here, this little oil pressure galley plug. So I'm going to be removing that and putting that oil pressure gauge or the oil pressure sensor right there. And then for the air fuel ratio, you do have the O2 sensor, the first one right here. I'm going to be using the rear O2 sensor that's kind of hidden behind. It's like hidden behind like this ECU. You can't really see it, but it sits right here in front of the cat. But I'm gonna be using that one for the air fuel ratio. As you can see, I already have the sensor kind of just hung up right there, and the connectors right here just kind of hanging there with the wire that goes inside the engine bay, or sorry, into the engine or the cabin compartment. But I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of hook up all the sensors, connect the O2 sensor, connect the oil pressure sensor, and then wire the boost sensor and start routing them into the car. All right, so the first one I'm gonna do is the oil pressure sensor. I feel like that one's probably the easiest one to do. Like I said, I'm gonna be using a oil galley area that's right there. It's like a little topper. So I'm gonna use an 8 sized Allen key to go ahead and remove it with an extension. Not moving. Oh wow, it is stripping. And this is gonna come out. That took a lot of work just for that little thing. Alright, so I had to move the car into some shade because my phone was actually overheating when I was showing you guys putting in, or taking out the oil plug and putting in the oil pressure sensor. As you can see, I already have it installed and hooked up. All I did was remove that little plug and install the oil pressure sensor with the cable. I'm going to go ahead and start routing cables into the firewall so I can go ahead and wire them to the gauges. So people that don't have an oil catch can aren't going to have to worry about this right here. But I'm going to go ahead and remove mine so I can get access to the little firewall grommet that's right here. Alright, so we remove my oil catch can, giving us access to this little grommet right here. What we're going to do is make a little incision in it and go ahead and route the 3 sensor cables right to the firewall so we can get it connected to the gauges. We made the incision. I put a little bit of silicone lubricant right there to help it go in. But a little secret that I always like to do is actually put a wire hanger on the wires and kind of tape it up to a way that it's gonna go in really nice and easy. And type it and you should fish it through the firewall so it won't have any issues putting one by one. That way all of them go through very seamless and easy, and I can find it with this little coat hanger. I'm probably gonna have to lift up the car to put my air fuel ratio gauge in, or the sensor in, but I'm gonna go ahead and just route it and act like it's already, you know, installed. Alright, so the AFR gauge, the AFR sensor, I routed from underneath the brake booster along this little, I don't know what line that is, but along this line right here, and a little bit down here, and then the connection is going to be made right here next to the battery, and then I put the actual sensor wiring right below, or like right behind the ECU, so the sensor wiring is right behind the ECU, and it's going to be curving right here, and it's just going to connect to this little wire with a zip tie. All right, guys, so as I mentioned, we went ahead and routed those 3 cables through the firewall, through that grommet. I did end up changing the location of the boost wiring, because this guy right here sits here, the boost sensor sits right here. And when I put it to that firewall grommet, it's too short to get to the actual gauge that's on the passenger side. So what I did, there's actually a grommet, as you can see right there, that sits right behind the accelerator pedal. And all I had to do was put a little hole through it and then fish it through. So that one is a little bit shorter, as I mentioned. So now that we're using the 2 wires in there, 1 wire in there, we should be able to fish the 3 cables. See, 1, 2, and 3. We should be able to fish these 3 cables through, the passenger compartment. What I did was I grabbed my coat hanger and pushed it through the center console area right there. I pushed it through, and it met all the way on the other side, as you can see. So I'm going to go ahead and use that same method of taping the wires to that coat hanger and then pulling it straight out so that I can go ahead and fish the wires for the sensors right here. Now that I have them pulled through, I have all the wires together. I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can use this to fish it right through to the gauges. But first I have to remove this little center shelf. Alright, so before we start plugging everything up at the gauge side, I did want to show you the 4th wire that I pulled through, which was the power wire. As you can see here on the fuse box, I used 3 adaffuses. So I used one for constant power, one for ignition power, and one for your dimmer switch. So those 3 are all connected there, and they are going to the main power wire harness that's right there. And then the 4th one is going to be your ground wire, which I'm going to add this guy here to one of the ground spots here. So I'm either use this guy or that lower one, and use the ground. But to kind of give you guys some help with where these adaffuses goes, all I did was, I don't know if it's gonna be different for everyone's gauges, but for the 12 constant, I used the stop right here, which is 4th one down from the left. And then for ignition, I used DRL. And then for the dimmer switch, I used the panel right there, 10A. So again, panel for illumination or dimmer, and DRL for ignition, and then stop for constant 12. So once you go ahead and put those on, and then put your ground wire, you should have all the power situated. Going back to the gauge side, as you can see here, I have the 4 wires connected. I have the main AFR sensor gauge right here. So as you can see, this is for the AFR gauge.
This guy is for your main power wire that's going into this little translator box. I'm not sure what this is, but I think it's a translator box. But that's getting it power. And then this guy would be going to your actual AFR gauge. So this guy's going to power your AFR gauge and give it the right reading. While this guy, again, is the power wire from the adder fuses and the ground wire that we got. So we need to grab power from this to power up the two other secondary gauges. So what I did was I added these are called posi taps, I think. It's without, like, you don't have to use soldering or splicing into the wires. These guys just twist on, and it works for what I need it for, just grabbing power and signal and ground for the gauge. This one is going to go straight to I want to say the oil pressure gauge, and then from the oil pressure gauge I'm going to be using a a daisy chain wire. So that one's just going to pull power from the oil pressure gauge and put it right to the boost gauge. And then the two remaining wires would be your oil pressure gauge, or your oil pressure sensor, and your boost sensor. So power and your signal wire going to this guy, and daisy chaining it from this, or sorry, power and signal wire going to this, and then your separate wire just for the power, the one that we added on the tap right here, to your oil pressure sensor or oil pressure gauge. That daisy chain from here to here, and then you just connect the two sensors. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that and finish up.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. I do appreciate you getting to the very end of this video. I know it was a little bit longer than normal, but I wanted to provide as much insight as I possibly could with the gauge install for those that want to install this yourself. So some drawbacks that you're going to receive with the gauges. So you can definitely use the oil pressure gauge, no problem. But being naturally aspirated, the two gauges you're not going to be able to use is the boost gauge and the air fuel ratio. So I connected the air fuel ratio gauge using the rear O2 sensor, and I totally forgot that with Ecutech and their whole emissions requirements, you can no longer disable their check engine light for the rear O2 sensor, for those that wanted to go with uncatted headers, things like that. So I'm going to have to wait to use that sensor whenever we become boosted with Sylvie and the JDL Turbo Kit. You can use the oil pressure gauge, so that's already hooked up, that's working. But then the other one with the boost gauge, you really can't use that because, of course, you're naturally aspirated. So with Sylvie, I'm just going to leave that disconnected, leave the air fuel ratio disconnected until we're boosted with the JDL Turbo Kit. I also wanted to give a shout out to all of my subscribers. I cannot believe that we hit 1,000 subscribers already. It's all thanks to you guys for watching my videos, and hopefully in the future we can get tons of more subscribers. We can build the channel, of course, build Sylvie in the process. As mentioned, we have a lot of stuff coming to Sylvie. We're not done yet with the build. I know I'm so happy to kind of be here showing you guys the build with Sylvie, because when I had my Scion FRS, I did so many things that nobody did before, and just to document all the things I do to Sylvie, it just kind of helps the community, the GTA community. Well, it helps the BRZ and FRS and GT86 community and the GR86 community to do all these installs, kind of like the Brembos. I know that was a pretty big install, with the the XPEL Stealth PPF and the carbon fiber hood and the carbon fiber roof. All of that I know helps you guys kind of do that to your own car, and also puts your own spin on your car. But if you see anything on the channel, anything that I haven't done yet, or if you want me to make a video on to install this part or try this, definitely leave it in the comments, recommend that to me. But again, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.